This one. All right, everybody. Sorry about that. Quick, couldn't figure out which button to click. So, welcome back. We are here today. Super excited to have my friend Parker on. Parker and I are in Boardroom Mastermind together, or we were for a couple of years before I left. But super successful investor out of Georgia, Atlanta area, right?
That's right.
With your Bulldogs, I love it.
Yeah.
I have two English Bulldogs, so I had to pick a college team since I'm right here in Chattanooga. That's what we decided to go with. So
might as well. It's been a good last few seasons to pick the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I went to my first college football game down there last year when they played Tennessee. It was amazing. So much fun.
Fun place, fun environment.
Yeah. So have you always been from Georgia, Alabama, that area?
Yeah, I grew up in Athens.
Okay. Geez, you're right there.
Yeah, and I live here now in Watkinsville, which is right next to Athens. And I moved away for school to Atlanta for like 10 years, and then we moved back here about 5 years ago.
What, real quick, just a little bit on your background before we jump into all the things we're doing. What'd you go to school for?
I went to school to have a good time.
I love that.
When it came time to the question, I asked my dad, like, "Hey, what degree do I need to get? What am I doing here?" I knew at that point in time that I wanted to go into real estate.
Right. Oh, you did.
My dad at a young age, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was 13. I didn't really know what it meant per se, but like it did instill some things that when I read it again in my early 20s, like it kind of made sense a little bit more, and some stuff triggered in of like, oh, that's why I was kind of doing that or being interested in that.
Yeah.
From an early age, I was blessed that my dad his whole life was he owned and managed rental property, apartments and houses and very small duplexes and tries and things like that in Athens. Yeah. That was what his dad built and created, and he did some stuff on his own as well. But for the majority of his life, he was a property manager and owner of property. He was a landlord. Nice. And so that's all I saw. Like my first jobs were doing punch outs, working with a maintenance crew, paving sidewalks, replacing outlets and all the stuff. And I knew from an early age, like that's not the type of work that I wanted to be doing. I wanted to be the guy like moving the pieces around and getting people to do those things. But I just knew about passive income from early on. And that's what's really powerful. And what I, thank my dad so much for instilling that stuff into me is I remember one line he said, "Son, you got to figure out how to make money while you're sleeping."
Yes.
He said that so long ago. And I didn't really know. I'm like, okay, how do you do that? But that was before that equation of like trading time for money or figuring out how to get it, where you're not doing that. It was foreign to me at the time, but that was kind of my start.
Interesting. So you're a legacy real estate guy. Like most of us come from retail or Wall Street or, some other thing and, work our way backwards into real estate. So did you ever have a regular job after you got out of college, or was it right to real estate?
Well, in real estate, yeah, my quote unquote regular. I mean, I worked at Advanced Auto Parts. I waited a bunch of tables through the years, all that stuff. But my first quote unquote real job out of college was a commercial real estate brokerage. You say like, what do? I want to do real estate, but I'm not sure what. You go get your license, right? That's what most people do. Well, I didn't want, I'm kind of the guy that doesn't want to follow the beaten path. I'm a little, my parents, I was in trouble a lot. Would just say that. I always wanted to be a little bit different. I didn't, if something needed to be done, it had to be because I wanted it to get done. I was kind of defiant in that way. I didn't fit into the box that everybody seemed to be trying to put me into. And I didn't know what that meant earlier on until I realized I needed to work for myself. I needed to be an entrepreneur. I needed to create that box that I fit in myself. And so your question again was, I don't want to ramble. I forget
That's
what.
okay. Yeah, it was. Yeah, what did you do really before anything before real estate?
Got it. You got me back. So I got my license, but I didn't want to be a residential realtor. I wanted something different. So I went commercial. So I got my real estate license. I got a job at an industrial real estate brokerage in Atlanta. And crazy short story, I did that for about 8 months until I got fired from that job. I've actually been fired from like 6 or 7 jobs. I'm unemployable.
Unemployable, yeah.
My dad even fired me one of those summers from working with
Really? Man, your own dad.
We won't go into that story. There's a lot to that. But so I found real estate investing or flipping houses through a guy named Matt Terrio. You may know him.
Yeah.
Podcast. That was my first kind of mentor, so to speak, and coach. And I did some one-on-one coaching with them in the very beginning.
Yeah.
I found his podcast a couple months into this new job. And I said, you know what? It's going to take me 2 or 3 years to build a 6-figure income, doing this commercial real estate brokerage. It's a small circle. You got to get in and all that. So I need a side gig, right? I need a side hustle. Well, flipping houses was going to be my thing. I started learning and taking action as I learned. I didn't, Matt told me in the podcast, don't learn it all and then go back to the beginning and start. Learn step A, do step A. Learn step B, do step B, and so step B, and so on. And so I did that. At my job, I was writing sometimes yellow letters. I probably shouldn't have been. May have influenced why. I don't know if they had me caught there, but anyway, I got fired about 8 months in, and 6 months earlier is when I had stumbled into real estate investing. And I always told myself, if I got fired, I don't know why I'd said that. Be careful what you wish for.
Right.
Or if I quit. Or if just something happened, I knew after about 3 months of going into this, that this was going to be my thing. This really lit me up and got me excited. And one morning, my boss took me into breakfast. And just when I thought he was going to be putting me on this new deal that they came up with and like giving me my next thing, he was like, we're going to have to let you go. And it was like a side sweep, legs out from under me. Did not see it coming. They actually told me that they thought that I was too entrepreneurial that I was not going to be a good return on their investment. I was going to draw all that stuff. Told them they were making this big mistake. But they had already made up their mind. So I went home, had a 2 or 3 day pity party for myself, drinking beers all day and, feeling sorry for myself of why I've gotten fired from all of these jobs. Like, what am I going to do? What am I meant for? And I just didn't see the silver lining that I had already laid out what I was going to do. And all of these things were happening for me to execute what I was meant to do. And that was 2014. January 2015, I started full-time with this, and that was the last 10 years.
So, I mean, maybe you did manifest it, maybe you did say all that stuff. And that's, maybe that's why it came to fruition. So interesting. You're the legacy real estate guy. I think it's fascinating that you started in commercial, because that seems to be the hurdle that most people that do residential real estate or wholesaling, they struggle with, even me to an extent, and I've got some commercial buildings. It just is not the thing that's the most familiar. So do you think that helped you a lot kind of starting in that? Because it's just a little bit different of a world.
Do you think it helped me? How?
Yeah, it helped you as to, where you're at now and, transition into more of that, maybe the bigger projects that you're not, I think a lot of people are timid to get into the lending and, some of the other things that you're doing, but you I
don't think I did it long enough for it to help me with that stuff. I was really only there for 8 months, and I was under a broker's wing, and I learned some stuff, but I really didn't even have enough time there to get some traction.
Okay.
I mean, it took me 3 months once I started to get my real estate license, because I didn't even have it when they hired me. They just said that was a requirement. Yeah. So, I was learning and listening, but I think the stuff that I'm in now, I mean, it's been a direct I know it has been a direct result of me showing up, and that involves paying to show up and get into rooms of people that are bigger and more accomplished than myself.
I think a lot of people discount how important that is. And, we've all heard people say the thing about paying for your friends. I'm telling you, even when I went to boardroom the very first time, like I thought I was a big deal. Like here in Chattanooga, we were a big deal. And my first boardroom event was down in Fort Lauderdale. I think that was Fort Lauderdale. And I'm in there, and there are these two kids that look like they were 12. And they're wholesaling like $600,000 a month. And I'm like, what the fuck have I been doing with my life? Like, this is crazy. I thought that what we were doing was a couple $100,000 a month. I thought we were like top of the heap. And then I realized that, gosh, we were barely scratching the surface. So I think if you have the right mindset.
Just a short plug for boardroom. I know you've been out for a few years. I would say starting about 3 years ago, the level of that room has increased dramatically, where I'll just laugh sometimes to myself, sometimes out loud when I'm hearing people present. I'm just like, wait, what was that number? You're doing what? And not just wholesaling, people that are own hundreds of units or, tens of thousands of apartment units, build to rent models, things like that. It's really cool. But
it's fascinating. Fascinating. I absolutely love it. So you come out of that, you get started with Matt, like you're right out of the gate was wholesaling. Is that where you started?
No, I wanted to be a rehabber. Wholesaling wasn't a sexy thing back then. 2015 or so, at least in my perception of it, it was like, I wanted to be the HGTV guy. I wanted to be the guy buying from the wholesaler.
Yeah.
I wanted the before and after pictures for whatever crazy reason. I wanted those.
Yeah.
And then I realized kind of the concept of the quick nickel of the slow dime. And I got beat up a couple times, and I realized how much I hated contractors.
The last rehab I did was, we're always rehabbing rentals, but the last legit rehab where I bought it, fixed it up. It was maybe 2.5 years ago. And it had been a while since I had done one. I'm like, I really want to get back into feeling like I'm creating something. And I got about halfway, 2/3 of the way into it. And I'm like, oh, this is terrible. This is not the best way for me to be spending my time.
Yeah. And we'll still do flips. And, we have a rental portfolio. We buy some and resell them on owner financing. We do some work to them there. I mean, I'm about to start a deal in Charleston where we've probably got a $240,000 renovation budget on that one. I mean, we're still doing them, but I'm going to make sure I'm getting paid for doing so.
Right.
And we are being very analytical with our decision on the whole reason to start a wholesale business was to control the deal.
That's it. Same for us. That was all it was. I was looking for my own deals, and it was 2009, 2010. And that was it. We started putting out, we buy houses signs, thinking we would buy the couple leads that came in, and we were just flooded with leads. And then, this is a deal for somebody, just not us. What do we do with it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so many of the deals that we wholesale, I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they're bad deals.
It's just not for you or for me.
It's not for me. Right. But people buy for lots of different reasons, lots of different exit strategies.
Yeah.
Some people like to buy hyper local. And when they find one in the neighborhood where they have 3 others, they're willing to overpay. And that's just where, wholesaling goes much more into marketing and sales than it does anything that has to do with real estate.
Yeah. What I tell people, it's in real estate in general, it's like, there's so many different ways to do it. It's like being the doctor, right? You could be the eye doctor, the nose doctor, the toe doctor, the butt doctor, whatever, heart doctor. Same thing with real estate. Not only can you be doing rehabbing or storage units or flipping or wholesaling, even within all of those, like, what you buy and hold, it's a plethora, right? For me, I was at an event in Orlando this past weekend, and someone was talking about 2-bedroom, 1-bath houses. I'm like, I love 2-bedroom, 1-bath houses. If I could have a street of 100 on each side, I would buy every single one of them. I just like them. I think they're great rentals. The people you get in a 2-bedroom stay for a lot longer than the 4-bedroom people. I love 1 and 2 bedrooms, but back when I was learning in the first RIA, 20 something years ago, they're like, oh, only buy 3-bedroom, 2 baths. I'm like, I don't know, man. There's something for everybody.
I totally agree with that. I mean, I think the 2-1s, and I've heard this before, the rent to value of the property is not comparable to the 3-2s.
Yeah.
So your rent from the 3-2 to the 2-1 is going to drop, maybe this much, but the value is, or the purchase price is going to drop even less
significantly. Yeah. Yeah. I've always liked those. So you start out, you're doing some rehabbing, kind of like, what's that evolution? Cause I know what you're doing now, and it's absolutely crazy. Kind of walk me through that. Like where did you grow first?
The first growth was just getting consistency with deal flow. And I think that's what most of my students in our Private Wealth Academy struggle with, or talk about initially struggling with before they understand how to properly market and how to, start that scaling process, is how much weight you have to put on marketing, and then how much of the human element you have to take out of the marketing process in order for that to become consistent. Yeah. And whenever you make that inconsistent, you ditto the exact same thing to your deal flow. Not right now, but 60 to 90 days from now, maybe even 90 to 120 days, depending on, what you're just understanding that cash conversion cycle. We're not selling Snickers bars, there's a lot of line. There's a lot of variables that are involved. So I started gaining consistency there, understanding, kind of that I was a problem solver. I wasn't necessarily a house flipper. I had to go find people with real estate or financial related issues. I had to provide a solution to those issues. And if my solution was not great enough, I wasn't going to get a deep discount on the property and get a deal in the first place.
Right.
So I think a lot of people are just out there hunting equity versus hunting problems and being solution providers.
Yeah, 100%. We talk about that all, especially in the transactions business, right? Our job as investors, wholesalers, is go out and solve those problems. The more of those problems that I can solve, or anybody can solve, the deeper that discount. No, 100%. I think that's a great way to look at it.
So as far as a transition, my first deal was actually a wholetail, a 2015 wholetail. I don't know if the word had been made up yet, but I bought this property. I had put a mailer in this guy's mailbox 8 months prior.
Really?
For the phone call. He called me. All I had gotten up until this point was people cussing me out. Your offers are too low. You're trying to rip me off, all this stuff. And he said that he had this house. He didn't live there. I went by, the door was open. I asked him why the door was left open if he didn't live there. He said, so his cats can go in and out.
Nice. And the neighborhood kids.
Mold from the ceiling to the floor, foundation issues, all the above. He said the city put a tear down order on it, and it's his childhood home. He was raised there. The dude was like 86. Wow. And he said, I can't see this house torn down, but I don't know what to do. I don't have any money. I can't fix it up, but I can't envision it being torn down. And then they were going to lien him for the amount of it cost.
Yeah. People think, oh, just tear it down. Like, no, dude, they're going to slap a $10,000 or $15,000 lien against it too.
Yep. And so he said, Parker, if you can figure out how to close this, and they said they're going to do this in 10 days.
Yeah.
I'll practically give it to you. And I remember where I was. I remember the sunlight shining through the blinds. I remember what I was wearing. Like, everything was that was the first motive. I was like, this is what the gurus are talking about.
Yeah.
Motivated. So I'm like, where are they? And, this is kind of the first conversation. I said, sir, I don't know how I'm going to do. I didn't tell him it was my first house.
Right.
But I said, I don't know how I'm going to accomplish this in this timeline, but I'm going to figure it out. I need to start making some calls.
Yeah.
I'll be in touch. And short story, I bought the house for $4,700.
Wow.
2-bed, 1 bath. There you go.
Yeah.
And I went to this meeting I flew out to California. First mastermind. It was a Matt Theriault event.
Yeah.
He had some guys coming that were speaking about marketing. He had the Aldantic guys there back in the early days. This was 2016. And this guy named Matt, a different Matt, I can't remember his last name, was up there talking about virtual wholesaling. And I was like, I'm a few rehabs deep at this point, starting to kind of pull my hair out a little bit. And I just was like, this sounds amazing. Feet in the sand, flipping houses, no contractors. You don't have to go to the house. I'm like, sign me up. So I had a lot of after the event conversations with those guys. We went to dinner with Matt and whatever. And I came home with a plan to start a virtual wholesaling business. I basically asked the guy, I forget his name now, but the one of the owners of Aldantic, I said, you're the data guy. Where do I need to do this? Where's my market? And he got back to me about 4 days later. He could have just forgot that I asked him and then told me when I followed up with him and just made something up, or he could have done a bunch of research. I have no idea. I was too green to double check that. But he said Knoxville, Tennessee or Charleston, South Carolina would be 2 good places. And I said,
interesting.
Again, green, just was going after it. I said, Charleston sounds like a more fun place to go to. So let's pick Charleston.
Well, unless you go to UT, my friend's daughter goes there and she says it's a fun place to be. We've struggled a little bit in Knoxville just because it's so spread out. Obviously there's good pockets and then pockets that aren't nearly as hot. So
I think it's a little bit more of a cash flow area other than certain spots versus Charleston, some slightly higher priced homes. There's still a really good suburb, kind of metro area. It's been great to us. I've loved being in Charleston. So we went deep in Charleston for like the next, 2 years. Started gaining some consistency, doing a deal 2-3 a month. But the reason I did that was because I was scared to give away anything or to hire anything or outsource anything. And I knew that if I had a virtual business 4 hours away, 4.5 from where I lived, I had to. I wasn't going to go there. I only went there like twice a year for the next like 5 years. I still only go there, and like all my teams there, I only go like once or twice a year. But it made me start to delegate. It forced me into those shoes. And I believe that doing that early on has kind of helped my growth and got me to where I am and made me more comfortable with some of the things that maybe other people, it takes longer for them to get comfortable with, or maybe they never get comfortable with it.
I think that's something that a lot of investors struggle with. We see that in the transactions company because we're one of the first things that people ever outsource. But I had that problem when I was starting. I was I can do everything. Nobody's as smart as me. Nobody works as hard as me. All of that just nonsense that we tell ourselves. And, for me, in my case, I would max out like 4, 5, 6 deals in a big month was all that I could possibly do. And it almost killed me. Like, just
wearing all the hats is tough. If you're talking to the sellers, you're running appointments, you're running comps, then you're doing your own dispo and trying to sell the deal, and then you're talking with attorneys about the ones you did 3. I mean, I remember the days. Yeah.
And sometimes people say, well, I did 1 or 2, I'm doing 1 or 2 deals and it's going fine. I'm like, huge difference between 2 and 4 deals a month. Like they're in different stratospheres. I tell it's like an equalizer, right? You've got all these different things at different levels, and you're trying to just keep all the balls juggling up in the air. So as you went to Charleston and you started to build out a team, tell me a little bit about that, because that was all new for you.
Yeah. So I hired first person was I hired a realtor to take the calls and kind of be a lead manager was my first hire. And I wanted to be acquisitions, and I was going to be dispo, and I was going to be everything else.
Yeah.
I don't hire realtors anymore for any positions in my business other than being a realtor on our team. I like hiring salespeople for sales, and I'll teach them the real estate. It's just my preference. That person didn't work out after a while. I ended up finding another person who was in sales. He was with me for, a year and a half or so. He ended up quitting. However, it was a good parting ways. He had another good job opportunity that he wanted to take in insurance sales. I still, he's a lender for my deals to this day,
Nice.
8 years later. But he actually, just imagine if everybody was this kind of guy in our world, what we'd be living in. This guy, before he told me that he was going to be leaving, he went out, sourced his replacement, and even trained that person by having them come to his house and had him shadowing him on appointments.
Really?
He was going to before I even knew about it. So he was like, "Hey, Parker, I got this. I'm not leaving immediately, but by the way, this is my timeline. I met this guy. Parker, meet so-and-so. He's already been trained up. He knows how to work Podio."
Dude, that's the best thing ever when you run a business. That's the holy grail, what you found there.
Yeah, it was amazing. He's a great guy. So that went into my second guy, and I only had one acquisitions guy for a while, and I did everything else. And then I realized I'm living in Atlanta. Yeah. I'm doing this 5 hours away. Why am I not doing it here also in the places that I know? Because I had to stop doing my rehabs when it took a lot more effort, more money, and all that stuff. People ask about marketing. I didn't have any money for marketing. I got $39,000 of credit card limit for 12 to 18%, 0% interest cards. And I was maxed out on all those cards right before I started, kind of getting consistent deal flow. So like, this is simple. It is not easy. It's not easy on the mind. It's not easy, period. But like, it's not rocket science, and a million people have done it before you. So you just need to make sure you're following good people. When I talk about a mentor, I think you should kind of have two mentors. You've got somebody that's like in the clouds, big picture. They're not doing the stuff you're doing anymore. But then you got to have somebody that's just like 2 to 4 years ahead of you.
Yeah.
Somebody that understands what it's like to be in the weeds. And when you ask questions to that person, you get different answers than if you ask the other guy that's the Kent, right?
That's exactly the analogy I was going to make. I actually really like that. It's the first time I've heard that. Because somebody like Kent, for me, when we did the one-on-one coaching. So when I went to his office, honestly, I've never been as prepared as I was that day. Like I had everything. I had been to Office Depot. I had my reports in the binder. Like I thought I was going to go there and Kent was going to be like, dude, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. And he fucking effortlessly, like he didn't even break a sweat, tore my businesses apart. Like I was a third grader. And again, like we weren't new. I'd been doing this for 10 years by the time I went there. But probably not the best guy for tactics today on PPL, that type of stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So no, I that's actually really great. I like that.
So I bolted on, back into Atlanta, and we started doing the same thing. I hired an acquisitions person there. I hired a lead manager there. And I just kind of ran that for the next couple of years in Atlanta and then Charleston. We ended up a couple of years later bolting on Columbia. I then opened up a brick and mortar office in Charlotte. That was a learning lesson that I don't want to do again, but learned a lot. That branch manager became my general manager. We came back virtual again. We're a primarily virtual shop. And then up until last summer, that was what we were. We were Charlotte, Columbia, Atlanta, and Charleston. And we tweaked knobs with the marketing based on where the best ROI was. I had, I've got a dispo coordinator, a team of 4 to 5 acquisitions agents. I have a director of administration that runs the whole back half of the operation and kind of the glue that keeps a lot of stuff together. I've got my general manager that oversees everything. That was the last hire that I made. That was just really the final piece that gave me back, not necessarily more time freedom. It did, but more so mental bandwidth, because he took over and started to focus on some of those more finite, high level business tactics. That was just me before. And I believe in many instances he's better at doing that than I am. And that's what we look for when, we're hiring up. Right. So, but he did float around. I'm not going to say that was like, oh, I need this person and here's the great person. And oh my gosh, it's been amazing. Like he floated around between a couple different positions within the organization.
Sure.
He came in as my recruiter, full-time recruiter. We hired 56 acquisitions agents in 8 months.
Wow.
For our virtual operation, high turnover, very loud and noisy, something I won't be doing again unless it's in an office. And then we opened up the branch where he lived, and he was going to run the branch. And we had the W-2 model. We had the 1099 model. Again, loud. I got sold on something from the social media, the money guns, the hitting the gong when the deal call, the ping pong table. I was like, man, if I had an office, we could do so much more. I wanted that vibe. But then I realized, it took me a year to realize, like, I don't want this. I don't need this. And I had a better organization, cleaner before this. I'm not saying it's the right way, but it was the right way for us.
I think it's definitely different. Everybody's person. Like I like in office. We're getting ready to move to an enormous office. But I do like, for what we do, having everybody in office, that culture and community. 100%. Could we run it virtual? Yep, sure could. And
there's a lot of negatives that we have to adapt for and compensate for by not being together. There's a lot. I have to be extra cautious on culture and making sure that's there, and doing little things, and we do get together. We go to this big man. I mean, Tim Bratz,
Yeah, I know Tim.
the big
It's
giant
right on the water.
cabin that he's got, not the water one, the one up in North Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
That he did at the same time. We're a small owner of that. And so we go up there and do a retreat, and, we do stuff in Charleston and things like that. So you have to be there, and you have to be very present virtually if you're going to keep that culture. Yeah. But we figured out a way to do it. And I've never gone to an office. My only experience going to an office was the job I got fired from, and I got a bad taste in my mouth.
I was going to say, not the best feeling from that.
Other than that, I've been at home for 11 years. All I've done is I don't have to go to a place where I have to show up and put a smile on and act happy and be the motivator, and somebody's knocking on my door honestly, I don't know how you do it with you obviously have to set boundaries, because
in fact, I mean, I'm literally sitting here and just got a text of somebody that wants 15 minutes of my time as soon as I'm off this podcast. So
yeah, I'd have to have no windows and like lock my door for like I wouldn't get anything done.
Yeah. See, part of it though is, we have a very well built out model. I have my partner, she's the COO. She handles literally almost everything. But I like to be here and be in the middle of stuff and see what's going on. And like today, one of our girls are getting married on Saturday. So we just had like 20 people in the conference room, and we got her a cake. And so it's definitely different, but because I see that in our title company, most of those people are remote because they are in Indiana and Ohio and Texas. And so we see the very same thing where you spend a lot more time on Zoom, just trying to cultivate that culture. So yeah, I think it's every owner and what you really prefer. I come out of retail and corporate world, so I like having people here. That's all.
Yeah, I'm with you. And the final iteration of that is South Carolina passed the bill making wholesaling illegal, which is pretty much the first state that's done that legitimately, versus just saying you have to have a real estate license or having some version of crappy language that honestly doesn't make any sense, and it just creates more uncertainty than what was there before.
So how has that changed your business there in South Carolina?
Yeah, massively. Massively. We had, in a business, you never want to change too many things at once, but that was something that when the hammer came down, we had to make a lot of shifts. We had to make one big shift, and that was I decided to stop wholesaling deals, marketing deals, because that's how they define it, as marketing a deal before you own it. Right. Oh, you can double close. No, you can't double close, because you obviously found a buyer before you owned it, so you marketed it. And it says you have to have a real estate license to do it, but then it says if you have a real estate license, because now they have jurisdiction over you, you could have nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
So I see, I worry about copy legislature, kind of on what they did and expanding into different states. But what I did at that moment is I said, I've got too much to lose. My team needs jobs. If I got wrapped up in a lawsuit, David Hyder, not David Hyder, you're David, Robert Hyder.
I don't.
Robert Hyder and his partner, they were guinea pigs for the class action for cold calling, and 7 figures in the hole, and lost 1 to 2 years of their life, and their just dealing with attorneys, and can they pierce the corporate veil and come after us personally, and all the fear that comes from that. And they ended up, getting out of it, but still they lost a little over $1 million. And I just thought about that on me, and with all the other stressors that we have, I would crumble under that scenario. And it just wasn't worth doing a few more wholesale deals. Yeah. So I decided to pull out. I said, it's going to make us take a few steps back, but we will go multi-state, statewide, higher percentage novation strategy. Think kind of like Nick Perry's operation, all other guys that operate like this, heavier PPC for marketing versus, kind of that wide versus deep mentality. And we're going to be better for it once we become a master at that. But when you go into that strategy, now you change your lead type, right? Yeah. We're getting tons of PPC leads. It's not the same thing as a direct mail lead or a television lead or a radio lead, which is where most of our money was going, in Charleston. Then you say, all right, well, we're getting these types of leads statewide. We're going to have to figure out how to get them to the market to do novations or EPP or RBP or whatever abbreviation.
Yeah,
you
it's all
put
the
on it.
same. I saw because you're in Nick's group. Yeah, I think I might have commented on your post the other day. What have you decided? I know you were struggling a little bit with the PPC stuff.
Yeah, I
Just
mean, we're
getting all the
doing
weird
it.
leads.
We're in 8 states. We're going to bump that to 15 soon.
Nice.
I'm split testing my own PPC alongside. We're using iSpeed to lead as well, and we're happy with those results. But ideally, I'm getting to where I'm running just our own PPC, and we're funneling all the money into that.
Are you using iSpeed to run your PPC or for PPL?
PPC.
Okay, they ran my PPC when we were wholesale. We were in 28 markets, and I thought they were great. I thought they did a good job, as good as anybody does. I mean, nobody's going to be perfect. What I liked about them, or maybe it was because I was very involved, we tweak. About every 60 to 90 days, we would tweak it. We would go back and say, okay, we're in all these markets, and this actually came from Kent. Am I getting leads from Columbus, Ohio, right? And are those leads, are we even able to contract them? And then can we contract them, but can we sell them? So we would look at it and constantly, adjust those markets that we were in. And we actually started in, I think, 115 markets and really weaned it down to the 28 best markets that we could come up with.
And I think it's a start out here, and then you end up kind of figuring out where you want to be. Nick says the same thing. But that's a 24-month mastering process.
Yes, it took a while.
I made that commitment 6 months ago to start that. And we've already started to see the traction that we're wanting to see. We're moving novations. We're getting deals in areas where we've never heard of before. We're pushing them through the pipeline. And so, kind of back up. I talked about the 4 pillars before we went live. That's kind of what I focus on now. Is I've got most of my time bought back from the flipping business. So we do right around a couple $1 million a year in revenue. We've done that for 3 years straight. I like that for consistency. I also don't like that for consistency. We want to break into that 3 to 5 range. And I believe this push that we've made is going to be what helps us get there. But my other time is spent on the other 3 pillars, which is taking cash that's created from that business and building our passive portfolio from commercial, triple net leases, standard rental properties. We sell houses on owner financing to hold the debt.
Love that.
A lot of people say rentals are passive income. That's not passive income.
I have 87 of them. They are not passive.
Holding a long-term note is passive income.
Yeah.
The third pillar is a lending business. I started lending about 5 years ago. Just keeping cash at work. And then we've kind of been playing the arbitrage game. We've got some large warehouse lines. I've got a bunch of private money that we put out. So we would love to be, your lender in South Carolina, North Carolina, and Georgia. We'll do transactional funding in other states as well. But fast track funding is kind of the platform we do that through. Nice. And then the fourth pillar is my coaching business, where I'm helping people build lending businesses, scale their flipping businesses, get their time back, hiring, training, firing, all the good stuff.
So let's go back, just because I want to go back. I feel like we should have done the whole podcast on South Carolina and all these regulations, because we could talk about them forever. But with fast track funding, is that the solution in South Carolina? Is to come in, close on it, do maybe whatever little cleanup or wholetail it. Maybe wholetailing is the strategy, the ultimate strategy.
I mean, that is a way to do it. And I believe, most of our volume comes from South Carolina. I think it's a good time to be a lender in South Carolina, because now all the wholesaler. The problem is there's a lot of people still doing it, and nobody's going to stop doing it until they start fining people or actually wrapping up lawsuits.
Right.
And I think that when that happens, the 36 months from now scenario can be beneficial to the investor, because more deals are going to populate on the MLS via wholetails, and there's going to be much less competition on those deals. It's a negative for the seller.
Exactly. That's where I was going. I think this law is horrible for sellers.
Yeah, exactly.
You're reducing competition.
Exactly. However, funding in South Carolina, wholetail is an option. You can take it down. There's a installment sale method that I'm sure you've heard.
I do. I know it really well. Yeah.
It can be messy. We've done a couple, just closed one the other day. I think that's still kind of up in the air on, whether that really work. I mean, it all comes down to the judge that's looking at it, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I don't know. The
I think
surefire way.
it's a very inelegant way to do it. I think just, yeah.
You go do 1, 2, maybe 3 a month. Like, I think that makes sense. You say, all right, I'm going to turn my, 100 or 200 deals a year into that. I think you'd like run it into the ground. I don't see that working.
Yeah, I think a couple things on South Carolina, because I've looked at a lot. I've talked to Gary Pickrins. I've spent a lot of time on it. One, I think the law was terrible for consumers because you took options off the table. Two, I think somebody like you who has funding now can roll into the state and make any deal you want because you have a distressed home seller who does not have 5 offers anymore. They have 1, maybe 2.
Well, I'm just not seeing that yet.
Okay.
I'm still seeing a ton of. First of all, we're not marketing at all right now in South Carolina. We pivoted those dollars to North Carolina, and then our PPC in the different states. Mm-hmm. I would love to come back, and we're still getting deals, and I'm buying off the MLS. I've got a couple flips going right now in Charleston and Columbia, but I'm still seeing tons of wholesaler offers out there. Yeah, they're just not. They're waiting to get slapped on the wrist, and nobody's doing anything about it.
Yeah. Do you feel like the law would hold up in court if somebody had the $2 million to challenge it? Because I feel like it's got some problems.
I think that it would take a long time. I don't know if it would cost more or less than $2 million. But based on the conversations I've had about the verbiage in the law, I tend to think that it would hold up.
Really?
I mean, we're always the bad guy.
Sure. 100%.
And so again, it just comes down to who's deciding the case. And if you get sued, whether you win or you lose if you get sued. Like, that is your mental capacity that you have to spend all this time thinking about it, not to mention all the money it costs, the time it takes, what that pulls from your current businesses or potentially businesses you're working on creating. It's a lose-lose.
Yeah. Do you know Brad Chandler?
I know the name.
He's the guy who fought in Virginia Homevestors for the We Buy Houses trademark. And it was $1.4, $1.6 million over 3 years. And he won, but my God,
I bet he didn't feel like he won afterwards.
No, it was exhausting. I think the law could be challenged if you had the right person. I don't have $3 million to throw at it, so it's not going to be me. And I think the state probably knows that. So they're going to win, and they have unlimited funds and basically unlimited attorneys. You said something earlier. I do think that is the most effective law, whether or not I think it's right or not. It's the most effective law that's been out there. And some of these other states will just start copying it. And that law they'll just change a couple of the words in it, and it will be the law in Massachusetts and Nebraska. And so I think, and I predicted this a year and a half ago, I think wholesaling's dead in 5 years in most of the country. I just think we've pissed enough people off. We're just moving in that direction where states keep taking a swing at it, and they're having these terrible bills. But South Carolina, I think, has figured it out. And sooner or later, we're just going to go back to, how it was in 2000 or 1995, whatever, right? You find a house, you got to close on it, you do your thing, you resell it, The good thing now is there's funding on every corner, right?
Yeah.
Even when I came to Tennessee in 2009, there was no hard money lenders here. I don't know if it was a legal thing or a statute thing, but you could not find a hard money lender here, which coming from Florida was wild, right? Because everything was legal in Florida. Right. So I think we're going to regress a little bit to that. We're going to get rid of a lot of the pretenders out there, and the serious investors, you're just going to have to, that's going to have to be part of your equation. What's the cost of money to close on this thing?
Yep. We will see. I don't disagree with you though.
Yeah. So I know I've kept you on here super long. I said, I know we'd go 30 minutes, but I've enjoyed it. I think we could have gone for 2 hours. Talk a little bit about coaching with Parker and what you're doing there, because I think that's fascinating. And you are the guy that's in the trenches right now. And you clearly have a ton of experience where you can help people.
That's what I was going to say, is when it goes back to the 2 mentors, I'm still the mentor that is, whether I'm not necessarily wearing the GM hat and the acquisitions hat and the dispo hat, but like I'm in that business every day. I'm in it every night when I'm sleeping. I mean, that business occupies a lot of my time. And so I can give really actionable advice to my students who are experiencing those real struggles, that are trying to hire that first employee, that are trying to get consistent deal flow, or even just consistent lead flow.
Yeah.
But I realize that a lot of people have more leads than they think they have, because they're just not good at converting those leads, because they don't have the right processes, follow up, and potentially sales skills or scripting to be able to process those leads effectively and make the most of the dollars that they're spending. So we threw everything, into a shareable file, and we've, let them copy paste it into their businesses. We've got weekly calls to, help them implement that stuff into their businesses. I extend my one-on-one time, depending on where they go with the coaching, to where they've got direct access to me for goal setting and breaking down those into metrics. So we know the daily, weekly, monthly KPIs that they need to be achieving to hit their desired results. I used to think in the beginning that I may or may not be one of the lucky ones that this would work for.
Yeah.
Or like, is this actually something that is going to work for me, whether I put in the work or not? I thought it was just this magical thing that it works for some people and others it doesn't. The more I've been in this game and in other games alongside, we've vertically integrated a lot within REI. It's a math equation.
Yeah. It's just numbers.
It takes all the fear out of it. And Kent really has been great over the years at helping me learn that. And when I temporarily short-term memory loss, forget it, he reminds me in his way of doing so. And it's great. And especially, like, we've tracked so much data over the years now, I have all those numbers to give to my students. If they don't know what certain metrics should be, general rule, general statements, I know how many leads they need to get or how many gross leads they need to get a net lead, how many net leads to an appointment, how many appointments to an offer, offers to contract, deal to close, average size, ROI, all the way down the line. And then you just build it into a calculator, and you know exactly what you need to do. You know what your effort needs to be. You know what your marketing budget needs to be. You just have to do it. Now that is the part that I can't make and won't make people do. If you're going to get in my organization and you're not going to go do the thing and show up with more questions that shows me you fell on your face because you tried it and now you want to know why, and so you can learn and go do it again, you're out.
Yeah, 100%. And this has been a heck of a commercial for Boardroom, but no, Kent 100% taught me the importance of the KPIs and tracking that data, because I didn't ever do it ever for 10 years. And, when we started looking at it, we're like, oh my goodness, we're doing dumb things here. We're spending money in places we shouldn't be spending. We're, doing things in the business that just absolutely don't make any sense at all. So, Parker, thank you, man. I appreciate it. I think one of the real gems here was having the two mentors, the one that can look at it at 40,000 feet, and then, somebody like you who is absolutely in this every single day. So for those of you guys that are watching, coachingwithparker.com, definitely recommend you jump over there. How can they follow you on social media? Where's the best place to see what you're doing every day?
Yeah, just Parker Styles, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook.
It's all the same.
YouTube. Yeah. I've got one giveaway on that coachingwithparker.com site. This is it's the calculator that my team uses to do all our deals. It's called our repair offer calculator. We've had multiple versions, iterations of the calculator, and so you get the most current version. But it's basically how we formulate our estimated repairs by looking at assessing pictures from a property, and then how those numbers apply using ARV, fair market value, market rent, square footage. And there's like 6 tabs at the bottom that all flow and connect together for your exit strategies. So one of the biggest things I've learned, and really I learned it longer ago, but I've really applied it the last 24 to 36 months, is not looking at the deal with the same lens every time. You have to not just look at it as a deal, as a wholesale or a wholesale or a flip, but what would you be able to get if you wholesaled it? Now, if you took it down, spruced it up and threw it on the market, what's your profit there after expenses? If you took it all the way to the retail buyer, what are you going to make then? But how much time is it going to take you, right? And then if you bought it for a rental, if you bought it cash and sold it on terms, if you bought it on terms and sold it on terms.
Yeah.
These are all baked in with calculators that you can get into the weeds on, so you can quickly and easily say, do I want to take the slow dime?
Nice. Parker, thank you, man. I mean, you're one of the true operators out there, and not just a guy that's really doing the business, but who has an organized operation that's actually running like a legitimate business where, so many of us in the beginning were just kind of running this thing out of off the hip. So very fascinating the way that you're doing all this stuff and implementing it. So, man, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, David.
All right. Hang on one second. Cool.